What's up, everybody? Welcome in. My next guest is the hilarious, on the rise, podcast host as well that you could catch on the downside, Gianmarco Soresi. In this discussion, we discuss, of course, the current state of politics, the importance, question mark, of comedians in this moment as well, and how media at this point in time is relying on the voices of comics, which Soresi has a very, very interesting take on. Without further ado, here is Gianmarco Soresi. Gianmarco, as I told you just before we started, I'm floored by the endurance that you have in this game. You went on MSNBC. I'm curious to know about that a little bit. You've been traveling throughout the country, as a good comedian does. Actually, let me start with this. Have your elbows recovered from getting shaded?
It's honestly nice that I had this crowd work video where someone said they brought a guy because their elbows look like mine, and now a lot of comments talk about my elbows, and it's fine because the joke I was known before that was an R. Kelly pedophile joke. So everyone would come up and go, "Oh, are you the pedophile guy?" And I'm happy to switch that moniker with the elbow guy. So I'm more than happy for people to continue their observations of my comedic elbows.
Have you ever thought about your elbows like that before?
Not in the slightest. I know that I'm lanky.
Right.
I know that I'm lanky. I've, as a kid, was tested to see if I had Marfans. I think like any tall, lanky Jewish person is. And yeah, I guess in a way it was such a detriment to my athletic career in school. It's nice that it's providing advantageous in my comedic one. Since
you were tall, I assume you played basketball, yeah?
Yes, but like truly only in middle school, not past middle school at all. I was truly dreadful.
Like truly, truly dreadful.
Yeah, I would.
How would you describe your game? Were you a Draymond type of player?
I wish I could even answer that knowing who Draymond is. You're going to have to go back to the Chicago Bulls in the 90s if you're going to use a basketball reference. I would describe myself, what's a player that is more on the bench? More as a audience member, I would say. There was a guy in my grade. He was 6'8" maybe. Like in middle school, he was very tall. So he was the guy, and I was there when he fell.
Mm-hmm. So you were just you were a scrub.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. Honestly, before he was let go, I would relate you to Thanasis Antetokounmpo.
Sure.
For good reason. He's a bench player because on the Bucks, he was drafted by the Lakers, went to the Bucks because Giannis Antetokounmpo is a fantastic basketball player. Thanasis probably wouldn't be in the league without Giannis. So you're asking for a bench player who doesn't play, who only comes in. You'd be a Thanasis. So I think that's actually, fair.
Great. I'll be a Thanasis.
Fantastic. You had a tryout with Game of Thrones. Is that correct?
Well, I hate to screw up my jokes, but actually I borrowed that story from a different audition I had, a much less exciting enterprise called Girl's Guide to Depravity, which was, looking back on it, a softcore porn show on Cinemax. This was before the Cinemax had produced things like The Nick, back when it was known as Skinemax. And it was I believe it only ran for 2 seasons, but the initial audition, I had to walk in, face the wall, and to an audience of 2 casting directors and 4 businessmen, just pull down my underwear. I had to get down to my underwear to begin with, and then pull down my underwear to show my bare ass until they instructed me to pull it back up. And that was the whole initial audition. So I made it Game of Thrones because not everyone knows Girl's Guide to Depravity, and sometimes you fudge the details a little bit as a comedian.
Okay. That must have been horrifying.
Yeah, it was. I came from an acting school where I was like, that's what a real actor does. Nudity is just part of the game. What was so frustrating though is I saw the show, and even the nerdy characters at some point, they'd have sex, and you thought, oh, finally we're gonna see a regular body, and even the nerdy guy had a six pack and a fuck everything, and I was like, there were no scenes where they went to the gym. That's my biggest complaint, I think, about putting all these good-looking people in movies. Like, at least have the movie show how much of their day is at the gym to look like that.
Normalize them.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well,
half the movie should be them going like, God, I'm so hungry. That
right.
should be half the plot.
Right. Taking a shit, having sex every once. Well, actually, the sex part is probably in there.
Sure.
Did you get the part, by the way, with your bare ass?
No, I got a callback, which I was relieved because I thought if I didn't even get a callback, that meant that I was solely rejected based on my ass.
Right.
But I did not get the role. And honestly, looking back, probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Probably a good thing.
Do they still work in entertainment?
I'm sure they do. I don't know what happened to the show. I know it ran for 2 seasons. I don't know if the actors who got those roles still work.
Oh, no. I'm talking about like the producers, directors, etc.
Oh, the producers. I'm sure. Listen, softcore porn is a booming business.
Is it a booming business?
I don't even know really, but I imagine so.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not exactly the market. I'm usually all clothes on or all clothes off, not this in between shit.
Gotcha. Yeah. Who wants a gray area in porn?
Exactly.
You said that you took acting classes. What is a lot of acting classes? What is the funniest story you can recall from acting class, whether it is yourself or a classmate of yours?
I mean, my God, we did we did this exercise in college. It's so crazy that it was allowed, and they stopped it for sure. But we had a movement teacher, and movement is a pretty loose class subject at this was in college at my acting musical theater conservatory, and movement teachers, they have to invent a lot of shit to fill that curriculum because most of us studied movement as babies. So they have to create kind of new exercises to prove that they should be tenured. And our teacher had this thing, I believe my freshman year, called the gun exercise. And it was pretty legendary because what they would do is they would get 2 seniors, usually guys, and they would essentially do an improv where we were working on a character, some physical adjustment of some kind, and the 2 seniors would come in with ski masks and fake guns, and basically we would improvise, all of us being part of a hostage situation. And there was no structure to it really. It was kind of up to the seniors. It's as close to hazing as theater kids were ever going to get in their life. And they would, torture us or say, do this. Someone, you have to put your mouth on the gun. Crazy shit.
That is wild.
And it was wild. And it's one of those things that, unfortunately, when you look back on it, it depends. I'm sure some people it's very traumatizing. Me, I thought it was kind of fun. But unfortunately, if you got killed early on, you had to stay dead for the rest of the class, or else you were being graded on this. That's the part that's insane. You were getting a real grade. And I remember that I died in a terribly uncomfortable position. So I tried to gradually roll my body in kind of more of a corpse pose in yoga, and the teacher saw me, and I ended up getting a C- on dying. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff. I don't know what acting classes are like these days. I feel like I was right before. I was of the age where, like, right after I graduated, there were teachers who got in trouble for the kinds of things they did in class. And I'm unfortunately of the mindset I like a little bit of a crazy teacher. I probably got the better end of things, but I think acting's a little crazy, and I enjoyed those more problematic exercises.
I think this is an important follow-up. How did you die? That you like, were in an uncomfortable position.
I think they were doing like a Simon Says, and it was just they shot me in like my left shoulder area, so I had to follow the trajectory of the imaginary bullet. And I'm a Stanislavski trained actor. I follow the physics of reality, so I turned and I think I just got my arm very much underneath me like this with my head over my arm and fell asleep. And you were talking like 58 minutes. I died very early on.
So they kind of screwed you on that front.
They did.
You told Vulture that your parents divorced, and that your stepdad did not let you listen to Marshall Mathers. Is that true?
Yeah. Eminem was very, it's all the media talked about. Eminem was like persona non grata.
Yeah.
And my stepfather's knowledge of pop culture was very limited to the Wall Street Journal. So like we weren't, there was a weird kind of divide where I went to my dad's house where I could literally do anything I wanted, including listen to Eminem. And then I go to my mom's house where my stepdad wouldn't even let the family watch The Simpsons. We weren't even talking South Park. We were talking like he read some article about The Simpsons making fun of Reagan and decided it was not allowed in the house. So Eminem was definitely banned. Luckily, I traveled with two very thick CD binders, and I had pretty eclectic taste. So I would listen to Britney Spears on one hand, Spice Girls on one hand, Eminem on the other, and I would just hide the Eminem CDs behind the Spice Girls booklet. And only once my dad, again, who's very lax, too lax maybe, or appropriately so, he heard me listening to, I think if it wasn't Eminem, it was Dr. Dre's first album, 2001, or not the first album, but the
second album,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, and in Guilty Conscience, him and Dr. Dre are debating in the second verse, some guys with a drunk college student. And Eminem has this horrifying lyric. He's playing the evil guy, to be fair, but he says, "Yo, look at her bush. Does it got hair?" And my dad walked in the room, grabbed the CD, broke it in half, and threw it in the trash. But he was so nervous about still being the cool dad that the next day he went out and just bought it for me again. He felt so bad. So like even if he wanted to instill some level of parental guidance, he was determined to be the house that I wanted to spend time at. And because of that, I was able to grow up with no oversight in my media intake.
Considering that you are an actor and a comedian, when you saw Eminem in 8 Mile, did you think he did a good job? Were you a fan of it?
I was 8 Mile, what year did 8 Mile come out? I was still pretty young. 8 Mile came out in 2002, so I was still 14. I don't think I had the most astute acting taste in the world, so I loved 8 Mile. I loved 8 Mile. I remember watching the behind the scenes where Eminem
DVD.
lost his where like there was that one part Eminem, I guess he lost his voice, so they had him just mouthing. He wasn't actually freestyling in the battles, and then the audience wasn't reacting in a good way, so he just pretended to turn it on and started rapping for real. And I was like, "You are the coolest motherfucker in the entire world." I'll always have, even though the last 3 albums have been trash by my estimation, I will always give Eminem a chance.
Right.
I will always give him a chance.
What I found to be pretty interesting was there was an interview that Papa Doc, Anthony Mackie, gave where...
Yeah.
Did you see this? Where he...
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, so he was doing an interview and he said like, "Yo, Em, like you gotta come at me. I feel like we shouldn't be friends." And he's like, "Yeah, we should not be friends." And so the next day he came back and recorded one of the freestyles about Anthony Mackie's childhood.
Oh my God.
And he was like, oh shit, like he really like went in on me, learned my story, and fucked me up in front of like all these people. It wasn't rehearsed at all.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was fucking awesome. Wait, hang on. Let's go back to your childhood. Were you not allowed to wear shoes inside the house as well?
No, my stepdad was weird in that he made us keep our shoes on. It was kind of a strange. He was from Ohio. It was a very just kind of weird. Where I think my mom, after her first divorce, was like, "Well, that didn't work. Let's go with the complete opposite," and picked a man very different from my father, strict in every way. And whereas my dad's, I could wear shorts, a ribbed tank top, no shoes, loose, eating cup of noodles for every meal. My stepdad's was very strict, and it was kind of awful.
Did you say shorts?
No, my dad. I'm saying my dad. We wore basketball shorts.
Right.
My dad, he would wear like ribbed tanks, then with like an Armani suit jacket over it. He was crazy.
Is that what influenced your style now?
I have strived to overcome my dad's style. I have yet to wear biker shorts, which I think that's something. That's definitely an elevation. I wear rib tanks, but of different colors. I try to incorporate some colors, but there's moments I'm out and about in my sweatpants looking like a slob, and I'm like, yep, I'm my father's son.
I've noticed from a lot of your style, it really does vary. Like you can go from wearing a really cool vintage graphic tee to wearing like, I don't even know what they're called, but I saw an interview you did where you had like open shirt, white wife beater, and like flower pants. Like you really range.
Listen, I'm having help. My girlfriend's helping me dress. My sister, she works at Celine. She works in like high-end fashion. So I have advisors. So if it's ever more than a vintage shirt and jeans, someone else shipped that to me and told me to put it on.
Understood. You also told Vulture in this interview that you did mostly non-union commercials to get by. What were some of those commercials?
God, I did a lot when I first started. Let's see, I was kind of the baby bottle pop spokesman for a little bit, where I was like a scientist and what was my tagline? Silly. Something about silliness. We're studying silliness. And they would bring me in whenever they announced a new flavor, raspberry, banana, sprinkles. And so I'd make extra money every time they made a new baby bottle pop flavor. I did a commercial for a Swiss soda called Rivella that filmed in South Africa and aired in Germany. Oh. Made a lot of money off that, which was a crazy one. I did Gannett, I think it's called, a newspaper company on the East Coast. I mean, I would do ads for anything. I did a hand modeling once where it was for a political campaign, and I didn't do my research. I just knew they were giving me $500 for the day. And as I was doing the commercial, I desperately tried to assess which side of the aisle this candidate was. It was a very broad propaganda for this politician. I still don't know to this day whose side I helped. But do
you remember his name or their name?
No, it was so long ago, and I didn't have to say anything. I just had to like look at a picture or pick up a picture of a hospital, crumple it up, and throw it in the trash.
That's it?
Yeah.
You made $500?
Yeah, for that $500 for a non-union. It wasn't bad back then. $500 was a good day.
Right.
There was also like non-union TV. There was a show called a network called Investigation Discovery, which I don't even know if they're still around. But they were like, that's what, when I was coming up, there used to be a time every actor did Law and Order, and that's not the case anymore because all that's left is Law and Order SVU, and there's so many actors. Investigation Discovery is like every show is a recreation TV show, and you would, portray the murderer in some story that, could be turned into an Oscar-winning movie, and you would instead do the cheap, paid $100 a day, recreation while they interviewed some journalist to recount the story, and that was a lot of my TV work in the beginning.
I guess I'm just curious, how does someone become a hand model? Does someone look at your hands in a coffee shop and go, "Oh, I got the perfect"?
Maybe sometimes. For me, it was just I had a commercial agent. They go, "Hey, if you want to send pictures of your hands, go for it." And then I don't think anyone. I have curved pinkies. My hands are fine. They're not. Who knows? Maybe that for that politician that they were trying to make look bad, they needed ugly hands, for all I know.
Right, true. Did that feel weird sending pictures of your hands? Like you're judging your hands in pictures then on like which ones to send?
I guess, but there's only so much you can do. There's only so much grooming you can do for your hands.
Yes, it's true.
So I'd much rather be rejected for my hands than my headshot, you know?
Mm-hmm. Fair. You mentioned Anthony Jeselnik. You've discussed him before. He also mentioned you on his show. What makes you a fan of his?
I think I really like the structure of jokes. I like to be surprised. I like sometimes for a joke to feel like I like a magic trick. And in a way, Jeselnik's jokes, he always kind of gives you the setup and surprises you with what the punchline is. He doesn't necessarily rely on the energy or the little joke, big joke. He really goes, I'm going to go slow. I'm going to give you time. And the punchline is going to surprise you. And with this kind of point of view that is mean. I think I like mean humor. I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think most people, they're being honest with themselves. They have a lot of dark thoughts. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they mean them or they want to act on them. But your brain just can't help but think of a horrible thing. And Jeselnik kind of gives voice to that. And it's also like fun to watch people watch Anthony Jeselnik. Like my stepfather, who's, as I said, very, very conservative, not just politically, but also in like what's appropriate and whatnot. I watched him watch Thoughts and Prayers, which is one of my favorite comedy specials of all time, Jeselnik's, I think, third special. And to watch him really just, despite his own beliefs, laugh before he could disapprove is very cool. And it inspired me to set a high bar for my own punchlines. So I'm just always excited to see whatever he does, because a lot of comedians, almost without fail, get worse as they get older. It's really true. It's kind of sad to witness. And I think, aside from what I like about his humor, I think Jeselnik is like patient and measured in a way that is rare in comedy, and it makes me always look forward to kind of watching what he comes out with next.
For sure. Why do you think comedians get worse as they get older?
It's just a matter of time. I mean, I feel like I'm certainly in the thick of that battle where writing really good comedy takes an enormous amount of time and thought that people not in comedy wouldn't necessarily expect, where for a joke to really be surprising, it's kind of like with horror. You have to scare someone. But with comedy, you have to literally, it's not just enough to be funny. You also have to surprise them. I mean, this is another reason why I think Jeselnik is so good, is that he continues to surprise you with what he says. And that's what makes stand-up comedy so challenging, is you can't just kind of be goofy or be silly. I mean, you can, but to really make an audience like in their gut go, ha, 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 produce laughter out of nowhere, it has to have that extra edge of a magic trick, that it almost takes your breath away and you didn't see it coming. Mm-hmm. And as comedians get older, They have life responsibilities and moreover, like, money responsibility. They have to go do press and they're writing a book and they're acting and they're doing podcasts and they're, these days worrying about social media. They don't have as much time to really fine tune their comedy. And there's also the thing of like, you can write all you want. You have to test it in front of audiences, and audiences, they are your ruler in terms of like, oh, did that work? Did this thing I construct work? And as you become more well known, you have fans, and those fans can give you incorrect measurements, so to speak, where they like you, they want to laugh, they're your friend, and you can use that. You can use the fact that you get their attention to construct something interesting and new and maybe a little more dark, or maybe a little more whatever you want to build. But it can also lull you into a sense of accomplishment when really what you're doing is not as funny as it used to be. When I had to write jokes in the beginning, I had to go up in front of crowds who didn't know me from Adam and make them laugh, despite not knowing me, despite not liking me, despite disagreeing with me. Now, if I headline, I'm performing for people who are already on my side. And again, like, that can allow me to do some cool stuff that I couldn't do when I was fighting for my life. But at the same time, it can make me lazy and not quite as vicious when I'm constructing jokes that really hit every second. And that balance is tough. And if you're Jerry Seinfeld and you walk up to practically a standing ovation right up the gate, you're going to get soft. So I think it's really tough. And I've seen comedians get worse and then better, but a lot of comedians, as they get older, you just see them make work that sometimes is deeper, sometimes more interesting, but ultimately, from a comedic perspective, is usually just a little bit lazier and not quite as surprising.
I think what I'm curious about is that what you said is really poignant and important, that you already have the crowd on your side. When you would go from town to town and you would try out a joke, let's say it was in Birmingham, Alabama, and it didn't hit, and then you would go to Nashville, Tennessee, and it hit a little better, and you did the same joke. When do you know, as a comedian, on how to adjust what you're saying? Or is it just like a game that you are competing against yourself to try and tinker as much as possible? Or there was a glimmer of hope when I was, in this example, in Nashville, and I just stick with it?
I mean, listen, again, it's like, it's almost city specific doesn't even apply to me anymore. In a way where, like, if I go to Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm headlining, that audience is probably going to be the most left-leaning audience, because in Birmingham, there's only so many places for these people to go on a Thursday night. So, like, you always try to learn, and you try to take, it's this weird mix. This is where comedy gets so weird, where it's like, yes, do I take in what the audience says or a different place says? But at the same time, I have to balance it with, okay, if I'm performing for an audience of Orthodox Jews, and I say this as a Jew.
Yes, as a Jew, I'm loving this already.
Am I going to measure all my jokes about Israel just based on that audience? No. But can I make a joke that's so good that even in a room where people disagree with me on a fundamental level, still laugh? That can be a goal. But if you go too far, then you start pandering. So it really is this balance beam of, like, pandering to the audience versus surprising the audience, challenging the audience. And you just take the average of all your data. I don't go places, I simply don't have the time to, I'm performing at a college tonight. I have no idea, is it going to be mostly freshmen, college kids? Is it going to be people outside campus? I have no idea.
What school?
a Case Western. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, I know one person that went to Case Western. That's it.
Sure.
One person.
And I was invited to two Shabbat dinners, and I normally don't have time, but I was invited by one, which is the kind of uh, 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 pro-Palestinian leaning Chabad group, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll go to this. This feels, I'm happy to do this. But I was invited by another one that, it didn't mention anything. They're both going to be there tonight. What the fuck am I going to do with that information? I'm there ultimately to share what I have, which I honestly, I think something I'm striving for even more is to not have jokes, to have jokes that no one agrees with, quote unquote. That's not my job. I'm not a politician. I'm not billing myself as a philosophical evening. I'm trying to make you laugh. I like to think that I'm not even there to say that one side's wrong and one side's right. I'm there to point out that everyone's full of shit. And, what you do with that is that's up to you. I think it's good to shake people a little bit. I think that could be comedy's job to kind of turn the mirror to make someone look at themselves. But I'm not there to kind of bring you to a conclusion. That's just not what I'm selling, I think my views can be seen throughout what I say, but ultimately, I do want you to be able to come to my shows, even if you disagree with some of my quote unquote fundamental positions, because I think that's the only way art can sway people. I think a lot of liberal art was, especially liberal comedy, it was so determined to, and I don't blame them. How do you exist in a Trump administration and not every day go, oh my God, this is crazy what this guy said.
Right.
But the problem with it is it allowed people to write you off because all you talked about was Trump. And it was hard because Trump makes himself such a, he says so much, he gives you so much to talk about. But I think it allowed a lot of these institutions to not be equally critical of Democrats and the other side in a way where the only people watching Colbert anymore are people who would vote for the Democratic nominee if somehow Eric Adams got the seat next time for president.
I agree.
They're following the Democrats, off the cliff if need be, and it prevented it from being interesting. It was no longer surprising because every joke, the punchline was, well, Trump sucks, and then B, you're not swaying anybody. So in fact, you're even failing at the thing that your comedy has resorted to, which is kind of DNC propaganda at a certain point, and you're failing. You're not convincing anyone new.
Totally.
So you're just creating sludge, by my estimation.
So you're not a fan of vote blue no matter who.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, listen, I think I ultimately I at the end of the day, I am listen, the world is bad and you vote the lesser of two evils. That's ultimately where I'll get when push comes to shove, because I'm very cynical about the world. Mm-hmm. But certainly the road to that, I think you should be fighting and kicking and screaming and trying to make any kind of sway that you can.
Right. I mean, this is what I think is pretty fascinating. And I even saw this yesterday with Bill Burr, who's just blown up in leftist circles for the stuff that he's been saying on his podcast. But he said to a journalist, stop asking me these questions. You guys need to grow your balls back. Should not even impetus, I think that's the wrong word, but should people be looking at comedians to hold up a mirror to society just in an artistic, funny way to shine light on these flat out atrocities that are happening?
I don't think again, I don't think that's comedians' jobs. I think it's so hard because it's like I don't think comedians should be viewed that way, but I think unfortunately the news landscape, they're the ones that shifted into entertainment. Like I think comedians, they'll talk about politics, of course, but like they shifted to like kind of the news to a degree, and then news entities shifted into full-on entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all become so fucking muddled where I go, you shouldn't turn to comedians for the news. I also feel like you should barely turn to CNN for the news or Fox for the news. Or in a way, I'm like, none of this should be news. We have to go back to establishing some kind of divide between these two things. News needs to be boring again. But the problem is we live in such an entertainment-focused world. It's like, I see it more on like the news institutions need to figure out a way to make the facts more exciting in a factual way. They need to meet the lack of attention world that we live in. There has to be a way to get people to intake information in a way that meets them at their door on TikTok. Unfortunately, you're not getting rid of this stuff. How do you meet people on that level? And unfortunately, until the news does in some capacity, people are going to turn to comedians for the news. This is no slight on Josh Johnson, who's
I had a
kind
feeling
of blown up in the last year.
Yeah.
But I know that people are going to Josh Johnson's clips for the news. They're going there for the summation. I mean, you could look at whatever Josh Johnson's last 10 stand-up videos are, but some of them are long form. I'm sure he's going to have something, if he hasn't already, about the tariffs. And people are going to get the facts about tariffs from him. I don't want that responsibility as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to say something, if I ever think of something funny about trade, but I don't want you to come to me for that. That's not my job. And unfortunately, I do think, and this is not about Josh, I think Josh is probably deeply more educated on these things than I could ever dream of being. But some comedians will take advantage of that. They will go, oh, people are coming to me for the news. I'll just keep talking about the news, or I'll have politicians on my show, and I'll be able to get people's clicks, and they'll turn to me not just for their comedy, but for their news, and I'll double my revenue. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that responsibility. And I do think comedians that tread too far in that territory should be held to journalistic standards at a certain point. And if it bites them in the ass, it should bite them in the ass. There needs to be some kind of separation, I think. Because if the waters get too muddled, then you mix up comedy with news and you start peddling misinformation. So I don't know. I don't really have a solution to it other than my own desire is to not become the news. I don't want politicians on my podcast, good or ones that I agree with or disagree with, because I don't want to be held to that standard of the news or of journalism. I'm there to be funny.
Right.
That's my goal. That doesn't mean I won't weigh in on things of a political nature, but I'm not having you come there for the facts. I might make fun of scientific discoveries, the way people talk about COVID or something else, but I'm not there to tell you what vaccines do or don't do, or how we should handle it. I might make fun of RFK, but I'm not going to propose who should be Secretary of Health. And I think there's a difference between the two, or that's what I'm striving for. I'm there to poke holes in things, to say that things are full of shit, to point out hypocrisies. I'm not there to propose solutions. And does that mean that someone could say, hey, well, you're criticizing this, how would you do it? And I go, not my job. That's not what I am. I'm the court jester. I'm not part of the court. A lot of these comedians, they want a seat at the table. And I go, if you have a seat at the table, you're no longer the court jester. You're part of the royalty. And you should be insulted and made fun of, because that's not, you're no longer part of the comedy class.
Interesting.
And they want the money. They want to live the life of the royalty. They want that amount of money. They want that amount of responsibility. And I go, okay, Dave Chappelle, if you want to go on Saturday Night Live and like point to the president and say, hey man, here's some thoughts I have about how you should, okay, then go become a politician. But you don't get the label of comedian. You don't get the freedom of comedian while playing the politician.
That's such an interesting way of putting it. So basically it's like your perspective is you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a really, really interesting perspective. On the political comedians front, one thing that you said that really stuck out was people are going to comedians for news. I know that Burr said that he gets his news on Instagram. I do agree that I'm sure there is a contingent of society that thinks they get their news from Josh Johnson. Personally, I think that is the meshing of the old guard being eroded in mass media and us having wherever we are at now, which as a media member is a humongous problem. It's a humongous problem. Also, I don't know how to solve it, because not only the attention spans from people, but you know, I get my news from like really boring ass places. If I want like world news, I go to like France 24 English. I go to like just objective, boring ways of getting it for live streams on YouTube. So like here's a proposal. Why don't we have you do a funny segment and it's broadcasted on local news, but it's fact checked where you get 5 minutes, or it's a local news broadcast they saw. So you get 2 minutes. Okay. You're not a sports fan. We'll replace the sports guy because, you know, fuck them, whatever, you know. Sure. So you get 2 minutes and then you get fact checked in your script to make sure that what you're saying is accurate. Is that a way to bring people in to like local Fox
sure.
25,
I mean,
blah, blah, blah?
I mean, maybe it's like, you know, they do, what is it, PolitiFact? Or what is it, the one that gives you like Pinocchios or whatever?
Yeah, that's one.
Sure, they start doing that for Netflix specials. I mean, I don't know. I just think, I think like, part of it is the inability to hold anybody to account for what they've said or what they've done. So it's like, you know, there's comedians who just able to get away with lying or just talking the shit, and they're taken seriously, and then, you know, everyone moves on when people find out they were wrong or full of shit, or right. I don't know. There just has to be like, I don't know. I don't feel particularly optimistic about how it shifts, because everyone's so, as you said, like our attention abilities are so fractured that we want to be entertained at all costs. But my hope is that you're able to, like, there's so many podcasters who engage in politics, and I'm like, someday that has to be viewed as lame. It has to be viewed as lame for having the president on your show. and I don't know how that shifts. I really don't. Even as we talk about it, I feel so bleak about it. I just know there's no way we can just accept the mingling of the two. And it's hard because it's advantageous to all the powers that be.
Yep.
It's advantageous to politicians to be cool. I don't know, man. It's pretty bleak. It's pretty bleak. The only thing I can think of is that news organizations have to learn how to package facts in a way that feels rewarding to their audiences.
But they can't.
I think about, like, there's this YouTube account called Elephant Graveyard, and they do like brutal, like almost mini documentaries about comedians. And it's like the way that they are able to, using a lot of media and clips and tightness and narrative, the way they're able to deconstruct Joe Rogan and kind of the ways he can be full of shit is really entertaining. And I think like, and has a lot of factual evidence to back up its point of view. And in a way I go like, the news has to figure out a way to engage their audience in a different way, in an exciting way. And it's the same way Bill Nye the Science Guy had to strive to make science more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Like the news has to do it because in a way, even the adults are children. And we need, Bill Nye the Science Guy who's dedicated to bringing facts to the ground, but packaging it in a way that people will enjoy watching.
Well,
and only by proving that they're being fed bullshit by some of these comedians will maybe people go, okay, I'm going to separate my intake again.
Right. I think the problem is, take for example CNN. They will have on a panel on a show, and it is nauseating. But those clips go viral on Twitter or TikTok, and they see it as like, oh, that's our show. It went viral. Clearly it's working. I agree with you that it needs to be like this Bill Nye-ish thing, or it has to be boring. The news has to be somewhat boring because the facts do care. Like the facts should matter. And in this current environment, all we have is, hey, this dumb idiot said something, and then this other person made him look even dumber for saying the thing, and now let's all talk about this dumb segment that went on. That is not news. It's just like it's a reality show on CNN is what it feels like.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like Jubilee. Jubilee, people love it. And, it's that mix where like, I understand all the problems with it, the kind of false equivalencies it creates. But if you are of the mindset of, oh, we need a more educated population, you need to look at Jubilee and go, okay, what are they doing right? How would I create this in a way that lean towards educating people? And I also think there is a degree where I go, this is like trying to fix things at a level it's too late. Like you need to worry about the education. You need to worry about the education of people in general.
Yeah.
That you can't just, if someone is easily tricked, how are you going to fix it? There's a degree of like, it's like if someone said, I got your nose, and the person believes them, what are you going to concern yourself with? The person who says, I got your nose, or the person who fell for it? Like that's sometimes I think where people get so mad at Joe Rogan, and I go like, yeah, but he's just a guy. He's just this like, I don't think he's as disciplined or as evil as people imagine him to be. I think it's the problem is there's so many people that would listen to this, and that's where you need to concern yourself. And I think that has to do with like educating people about how they can be tricked, educating people to be skeptical, educating people to not trust authority, and also to like not trust. So many people go, well, I don't trust authority. I don't trust the mainstream media. And it goes to re-educate them of like, also these, the way that Fox News has been able to convince people that they are somehow not the mainstream media too, the way that podcasters who get more views than CNN, that they're not mainstream media. That's where part of the problem is. People go, oh, I'm going to the not mainstream people. And it's like re-educating people of like, no, those people are also the mainstream. They are compromised. they are mingling with the rich people out there.
Yes.
And that's a messaging problem. And unfortunately, no one makes any headway because who are the ones combating Joe? What are they saying? They're like, oh, we need the Joe Rogan of the left. What they're basically saying is, at least the Democratic line is, oh, we need our own person who spreads our party line, which is partially influenced by billionaires of a different ilk. We need our version of that, and that's why the solution isn't on the party level. It's someone who's separated from that, I think.
Mm-hmm. When you see Joe Rogan having on Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Mark Zuckerberg, your thoughts are what?
My thoughts are just like, you are not you're not equipped to challenge these people, and I don't think emotionally they might agree with them, or they're just not. The reason I don't want to have a politician on my show is partially because I'm not skilled enough to challenge their spin. These are professional bullshitters. Mark Zuckerberg is there to make a sales pitch for Meta, and the illusion that they're just these chill guys is bullshit. And I do think some of their fan base is rubbed the wrong way when they see these billionaires on the screen. But it's revolting because I go, why are you so cozy and friendly with this person? Why isn't your questions to them about the damage Facebook has done in other countries, in spreading misinformation, you're allowing them to get off scot-free. You're allowing them to talk about these fun hobbies. You can talk to Mark Zuckerberg about his whatever martial art he's pursuing.
Jiu-jitsu, I believe.
And jiu-jitsu. And you're letting them, you're humanizing them. And ultimately, if you're able to challenge them, great. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But if you are essentially extending them, if you're not challenging them, then you're platforming them. I don't fully agree with this idea that, I think it's failed, the idea that don't ever talk to these people. Don't ever have so-and-so on your show. You're just platforming them. But if you're not challenging them, then you are platforming them. What you do with them, mm-hmm. that's where that gets shown. And that's why I do think if you're saying that you have the skills to challenge this person and they're worthy of being challenged, then great, have them on. But I think a lot of these comedians, and frankly, a lot of news people, and this is where I go, are you going to blame the comedians or are you going to blame the news people? They don't challenge them. They don't have the skills, or they're not willing, or I know with the news organizations, it's kind of the big bottom line is, well, if you challenge them too hard, the RNC is going to stop sending them to do a segment on your show.
That's right.
And I go, well, then you're useless. Then you might as well, the same way that NPR has to tell me, Facebook invests in so-and-so, just so you know, you should have to say that at the top of the interview, because it is a conflict of interest. You should start every interview with, just so you know, we're speaking with Mitch McConnell today, but we're also nervous that we want to speak to Mitch McConnell next week, so we're going to be a little soft on him.
Right.
You should have to disclose that, because it's a conflict of interest that you're not disclosing. So sorry, I'm kind of divergent, but it's disgusting when they have these billionaires on, because you go, you're not challenging them enough. Now, on the same hand, I do think Kamala should have done Joe Rogan. I go, okay, if they're going to have these people on, you might as well go on. I admire Bernie Sanders for going to these places, because look, that's just the world as it is. I can kind of pray Joe Rogan will change, or I can meet the world as it is. I do think he's worthy of criticism for having Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel on and Elon Musk and not just nailing them with a bunch of questions about other transgressions. Mm-hmm. But the world is what it is. And I think if you're going to be a politician or you're going to try to make political change, you got to play ball.
I agree. One criticism that I've received a lot is, excuse me, when I've covered Pat McAfee, for example, and he's had Aaron Rodgers on, and Aaron Rodgers says nothing but misinformation about vaccines, about COVID, about hydroxychloroquine. And the comments that I always get on those videos are, well, he's not a journalist. Well, he might be it just hit me. You may not know who Pat McAfee is.
No, I do.
Okay.
I Googled it, but I do recognize and I do know him.
Okay, so former NFL player turned broadcaster, got his start, no surprise, with Barstool, got out of Barstool. He has done comedy, and he launched his own The Pat McAfee Show. It blew the fuck up. He had a deal, I believe, with FanDuel or DraftKings, one of the two. I think it was FanDuel. And then that deal expired, and then ESPN picked him up, and he was the highest paid person until Stephen A. Smith just dethroned him with a new $100 million contract. Okay, you're caught up. So he's not a journalist. He is a former football player who dabbled in comedy, blah, blah, blah. But the criticism I get is, okay, if you're going to have Aaron Rodgers on and he's going to say these things about like the vaccine and about COVID, where is the line? Like, I know he's not a journalist. I know he's not a reporter. He's a podcast host, but he is on ESPN. So in the same vein with Rogan, where I know where I think the line is, and I know where you think the line is, but where is the line, whether it is sports or podcasting / podcasters alike?
I mean, again, I think like, what are you going to do? If I was his friend, I'd say, hey, a legion of idiots are getting their medical advice from you. Maybe you should reconsider how responsible you are for what you're saying. But what am I going to do about it? Ultimately, I go, the problem is people looking to him for medical information. Do I think it's worthy of critique? Absolutely. Do I think it's like, do I think if you're going to have someone, if someone came on my show and started saying like, here's what the vaccine does, I probably would go, just so we all know, I don't know why the fuck this person is qualified to say this, or I have no idea about this. Why are we talking about this? I'd want to pivot. I would want to pivot. That's me. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not prepared to like, know what kind of laws need to be in place. And we saw the failure of Facebook, YouTube or TikTok adding a little blurb about COVID. Mm-hmm. The problem is people aren't educated. And I would ultimately go like, you have to look within and how the problem started. Like, I think about with medicine, I go, of course people are skeptical. I mean, people are skeptical of medicine because there's a lot of, my sister was talking about how she went to a dentist and, they told her you have to get this electronic toothbrush. And it's partially because they have a deal with the toothbrush company. So they have a coupon and, they get a kickback or something. Mm-hmm. And she goes to another dentist who's like, no, you should not be using this toothbrush. And I go, don't you see that this small version of two doctors disagreeing because they're compromised by whatever company they're getting a kickback for introduces the skepticism in my sister of, God, these doctors are all full of shit. And I go, people have had such bad experiences with medicine. It's hard to blame them for being skeptical of the industry as a whole. You have to look within and go, how is this information being shared that people are becoming so mistrustful? I think like when it comes to COVID stuff, I sometimes go like, did the government do a good job of when they found things to be ineffective or decided this regulation should shift? Did they do a good job of explaining we were wrong about this, or if we had done this it would have been better, or we wanted to try this, and in retrospect there's a degree, we live in a culture of no apologies and no kind of taking responsibility, and that's a deeper thing, because if you apologize, people jump on that to say, look, they were always full of shit.
Right.
But it's, we don't live in a healthy culture right now at all. And again, I go, you can't stop people from talking shit unless you want to become, you know, more controlling over speech. And I go, you have to focus on how do we create a healthier system? How do we educate people better? How do we spread information better? How do we, instead of blaming, you know, if I'm a Democrat, I'm going to go, how do I stop blaming Fox News and start going, how can MSNBC be more trustworthy? You know, it's the blame game doesn't work. The censorship doesn't work. It's about cultivating trust. It's about how do you share information better and educate people in a way they can understand and spread. And don't blame the comedians. Look to the people who were supposed to be spreading the news. That's the only way out, in my estimation.
Right. Well put. I just realized there was another comedian who had Donald Trump on his podcast prior to the election, and that was Andrew Schulz, who has really blown up. Like really, really, really blown up. He called it a joke. He said that he would make love to Kendrick Lamar. That was a little weird. What do you make of his ascension and the way that he has framed his comedy?
I mean, I've spoken on it to a degree where, like, I just don't. I think ultimately they don't challenge the politicians that they have on their shows hard enough. I just don't think they do. And I think if you're going to serve as an arm of a political wing, you deserve to be criticized as a member of that political party. I don't really care about the Kendrick stuff. I go, in the realm of entertainment, whatever. If you want to entertain, if you want to fight, if you want to have a beef with someone, I don't give a shit. But when it comes to politics, I go, these have tangible results on people's lives.
Yep.
And if you're going to help with the promotion of a politician or political ideology, you're going to hold the bag with the consequences of it. And I think you should be held to account, not as a comedian, because you've decided to enter that other sphere. And we'll see how it all shakes out. We'll see if you know, certain rights get taken away, how it falls back on you. But I think it's a bad look. I don't think you're acting as a comedian. I think you're acting as a newscaster. I think you're acting as a pseudo journalist. And I go, if you want to do that, you're going to be held to account as a journalist. I think it's the same thing, you know, Hassan Minhaj got criticized for to a degree, where it was like there were certain elements where I go, if it's story, it's entertainment, that's one thing. But if you lean towards journalism, you're going to be held to different standards. And If comedians want to go down that path, that's up to them. I'm not here to tell someone what they should be doing as an entertainer. I'm looking out for myself, and I'm holding myself to my own standards. But I do think if you're going to not act like a comedian, you're going to be judged not as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
And the "it's all a joke" is not going to hold up.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got two more for you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So one thing that I've become pretty invested in is the results of crowd work. Do you know what your highest viewed YouTube video is by chance?
I would guess it's the one about the guy who was sort of seeing someone and then she found out he didn't vote, but he kind of expressed a defeatist attitude that Kamala couldn't win because the country was sexist and racist.
That is correct.
And she kind of took it personally, or just saw it as like a judgment of his character as opposed to a point of view on America, and stopped dating him. But yeah, that's definitely my most viral crowd work video.
That is correct. So there was that one. There have been others where you had an exchange at a drag show of all places with a supporter of Donald Trump. That's an oxymoron. Her lines, and I quote, "You do you, baby, and Biden's killed the entrepreneurs." Crowd work is tricky because you never really know what you're going to get. I feel like it sharpens the tools. But when you've had these exchanges, you're trying to, once again, as I stated previously, it seems, hold up the mirror and be like, no, this is what's going on. Do you see what's going on? How long did it take you to get comfortable with these exchanges? And do you believe that through your crowd work, you might be changing a few minds here and there?
I don't know if I'm changing any minds. I think, like, for me, the two clips that you cited, to me, they're very different. Like, the one with the text message, I see as like a good piece of entertainment, because we're just like showing life for what it is. Like, the guy didn't vote. It's up to you whether you care about that or not. Given the results of the election, it wasn't one vote. The person on the phone, some people said, oh, she's so in the wrong. Other people say, he's in the wrong for his behavior. I just think it's like interesting. I'm just showing you life in a funny way. The other one is like, I left comedy territory and I became preachy. I told this woman, you're full of shit. There's no way I changed that woman's mind that night. I think there's certain like realms where I feel justified to be preachy and be kind of go fuck yourself, and in that case, like, I think being at a drag bar while being a Trump supporter, it just felt so one-to-one, you're full of shit. I just got angry. But ultimately, I think that's less inclined to change someone's mind. I think, like, I always remember I had a joke about Brittany Griner, and it wasn't even a joke about Brittany Griner, but it started with saying Brittany Griner was recently released from the Russian prison. And then I said a joke that was like, a joke. It was a joke. It doesn't even matter what the joke was. But one time I was in South Carolina, I believe. I just started the joke. I said Brittany Griner was released from a foreign prison. And just to be clear, in my point of view, I was like, that's good. That's a good thing. It's not good when an American citizen is imprisoned in a foreign country, let alone for having hemp oil or something. And I think the hatred towards Brittany Griner, might be partially related to her politics, but ultimately stems from sexism and homophobia and racism in the American population. That's my point of view.
Right.
Period. That's not what the joke was, though. But I said Brittany Griner was released from a foreign prison, and someone in the audience went, "Boo!" And rather than be funny, I said, like, I couldn't help it. I said, I actually think it's good when Americans are released from foreign prisons. And it was so awkward. No one laughed. No one was swayed. No one was anything. I said what I meant, but it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. The guy just probably thought I was a dick. People who agreed with me. Maybe someone went, woo, or gave me a slight applause. No minds were swayed. And in a way, it's virtue signaling. Now, what would I think be more effective? If someone loved my body of work, who thought it was really funny, and along the way, whether it was listening to this podcast or something else, found out that, heard my jokes enough to hear my thoughts about how America is racist and sexist and weed should not be punished like this, blah, blah, blah. That would be more effective than what I did. Now, on the surface, it might seem like, ooh, you shut that guy up or whatever, but that's not effective. That's nothing. It's virtue signaling. It's virtue signaling art. And some people will go, it was nice to know that you were on our side. And maybe there is some of that. Maybe it's nice that someone who likes me and sees a Jewish person who criticizes Israel, it's nice to hear it. Sure. Mm-hmm. What do I think is more effective, though? If someone loves my comedy and ultimately goes, oh, he makes fun of Israel. I like this guy. I'm going to watch the special even though I don't agree with him about Israel. And maybe it gradually opens their mind to think a little bit more about that. But it's not that direct, preachy, you're wrong. That rarely changes people's minds. Mm-hmm. So it's complicated, but I think I'm not going to sit here and pretend that my goal is to sway people. I'm here to make people laugh. I believe what I believe. And I ultimately think at the end of the day, people are going to be more influenced if they like me as a comedian first than if I try to shove my views down their throat every second I get.
I have two more for you, and I wanted to ask you about that. So you having the jokes about your Israeli barber, I thought that was hilarious. And the reaction overall, it seemed, at least in the comments, and look, I am a person on YouTube, so I know how toxic they can be. It seemed overwhelmingly positive. Outside of those comments, what has been the reaction from your community?
I mean, I wasn't raised particularly in a super religious community, so I haven't had to deal with too much of like my own close family or whatnot. But I certainly have received plenty of messages from Jewish people, either saying that I'm wrong, some saying that I'm not actually Jewish, or I'm using my Judaism in a way that's helping anti-Semitism, or of some version of, well, if Hamas had their way with me, I'd be dead, blah 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 blah. And ultimately, I think it's like, I am not a geopolitical expert. I don't claim to be. The thing that I'm able to assess with confidence is that the title of anti-Semitism is being exploited to shut up anyone who criticizes Israel's actions or America's contribution and condonement of Israel's actions. And that's as plain as day to anyone looking at things with a neutral eye. And when the title of anti-Semitism is being weaponized so blatantly, mm-hmm. I have the power as a Jewish person to go ahead, accuse me of anti-Semitism. Go ahead. I I can speak honestly on this subject, and you can't use this clearly, nauseatingly so, bullshit argument that I'm simply being anti-Semitic. And that allows me to speak more bluntly. It allows me to speak more harshly. And it allows me to write jokes that I think are good, because they haven't been articulated necessarily exactly in this way before. And so I'm fine. I'm fine with the critique. I'm fine if people claim I'm not Jewish. I go, you think I circumcised myself? It's like, go for it. I've spent my whole life being told I am a Jew by other people, by other Jewish people. So, sorry, you have to live with that. I am a Jew. I've been told by these certain people that I'm a Jew who now might criticize me. You have to live with the fact that you can't leverage this blanket claim of anti-Semitism against me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to call out that bullshit as I'm able to see it.
Well put. I've noticed throughout this interview that you really do, and I'm not sucking up by any means, you really do have a very good voice.
I appreciate it.
If you were to do a voiceover for like a Disney movie or something, what do you think it would be?
Sure. I mean, I would hope Disney would still hire me after all the things I've said about Gal Gadot and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. God, at this point, I think I'm past my Prince days. I'd love to do I would love if Disney maybe did some version of the post Happily Ever After, when the prince and the princess got divorced and they found out they actually didn't have that much in common. The prince realized, I only liked her when she was asleep, I guess. And I would love to be a part of that. Kind of the older prince realizing he's made a grave mistake. And just let me play some goofy animal. I'm down to play, I don't know, a donkey or a giraffe. That's all I can hope for at this point, and I'd be more than happy to be an animal.
Don't shoot so low, man.
Listen, animals, they can be the leads.
Oh, for
sure. They can be the leads in a spinoff.
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying, you are the stage, man. So, go for it. Gianmarco, I really appreciate the time. I'm glad that we finally got to do this. I really appreciated the conversation. And although you are a very funny person, I'm honestly glad that it got serious at times, because we are talking about things that it feels like are deeply frustrating, whether it is comedy, politics, mass media, etc. So I really, again, appreciate the insights. Great work on all of your bits that I see on YouTube, TikTok, etc. Keep up the great work. And thank you again for hopping on.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. I want to give a special thanks to Gianmarco and Courtney for helping set this up. I appreciate the heck out of both of you. This is a growing show. So please, if you can, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, ring the bell as well for notifications. Head over to our podcast page on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world. And write us a review. It helps greatly. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. Have a great day.